Hello again. I have quite recently uploaded 3 of my games involving the spike opening. 2 of them, the full games, and 1 a conclusion. Well, this is a conclusion to yet another spike opening, 1G4. And it shows yet again in blistering fashion just how dangerous it is, especially down the G line. Now, as you can see, I'm 3 pawns down here, but that's not a problem. It's necessary to sacrifice material in all these kind of gambit openings, and that's precisely what I did. Just note that if it were black's move, he'd have a nasty double check here. He would also have some rather irritating captures here or pushing pawn on. What we need to do, of course, is to stop black doing this and getting away, because then he'd have a chance to win the game. So how do we make sure that we don't get caught up in this double check, and how do we stop him from escaping? Well, the only way that you can stop the double check is by checking black. It's as simple as that. And how do we control the square? Well, looking at white's 2 knights, it has to be one of these to take this pawn. Which one? Well, the objection to taking with this is that it allows black to partially escape here, and there is no checkmate in either 6 or 7 moves, which is the maximum 7 moves in this line. So by implication, it has to be the other knight. It just has to be the other knight. So we take off here. Now then, what does black do? Well, he has this move. And what we do is we now employ our own double check by coming here. He would have to come here, and then it's either queen h3 or queen g3, and that is a mate in 3. So clearly, on the basis of that analysis, black has no option other than to take the knight. We have just played knight on h3 takes f4 check, and he's not going to move in there, he's going to take the knight. Now what do? Now what we do is we take here. Now you might say, well, you're relinquishing your control over the square, aren't you? So don't you run into the same problems? No, we don't. No. I'll leave you to figure out why we don't. It's a bit of an analysis in itself, but just go ahead and have a look at that by all means if you want, but there are differences here, and they will become a little bit clearer as we move along. Now, of course, black can move there, and we'll be having a look at that. But what we can say here is that if we could have banked on black taking the knight rather than after knight on d3 to f4 moving king c5, it wouldn't have made a jot of difference. It would be by transposition of moves. But we couldn't bank on him doing that, because after knight on d3 to f4, he could have moved king c5, and that's why knight on h3 is the correct sequence. We'll look at this last. We'll look at this move first. He has those 2 dark squares to which he can move, and we are controlling e6. So what do we do now? Well, in this line, we take the pawn and put him in check. Now, he has no option but to take the pawn. So what do we do now? Well, the next move is not that easy to see, and it took me a few moments to spot it in my analysis prior to declaring checkmate in 7 moves. I'm making a habit of doing this, but I can pretty well see upwards of that sort of number of moves ahead, sometimes even further than that. It depends on the type of position. Well, in this one, what you do is we have a double check. Like we did in the mate in 3 earlier on, we have a double check here with the knight and the queen. The queen is admirably covering this 4th rank. So, where can black go here? He only has 1 square, it's to here. Now, the next move, Well, our knight is earning its salary very well indeed. Knight c7, check. Where does black go? He only has one square, doesn't he? Just the one square, and it's here. And then, yes. So for any of you that were wondering why doesn't he drop the bishop back, that doesn't work that soon, but it works right this moment because the queen, like I say, is stopping him escaping, and that is checkmate. So let's put that back, and then let's look at the final variation in this. A very interesting game, very satisfying. These games are always very satisfying when you win. Even if you don't win, they're still extremely satisfying games because you are going to get something out of them and learn from them. That's the starting position. So again, knight on h3 takes f4. He recaptures, and so do we. Now, we have just looked king e5, exchanging pawns. What happens if he comes here? Do we exchange pawns here? Well, if you take pawn takes pawn there, he goes to here. And he can, even when we bring our knight back, get to here. We can think that we can checkmate him here, but we can't, for the simple reason that he can interpose, and it just doesn't work at all. Check it out for yourselves by all means, but it doesn't. He's going to get away and be outside of the 7 moves at least. So what do we do there? We don't take that pawn off. Again, like with which knight, if after e takes d4, if you could bank on him taking on d4, you would transpose into the line, but you can't bank on that at all. So it's not going to happen that way. What do? You play here. You go back with this knight and you cover the flight square. So you force him to go back to here. What do you do then? Well, this time you do take the pawn, but with the queen, like that. Isn't that nice? No, we don't have control over e6, do we? And if you look at that position, that is his only move. He can't touch the queen. It's covered by the pawn. So what do we do now? How do we make progress? Surely he's getting away down here. How can we stop him? We can't play queen e5 because of the pawn. If you play knight f4, he's away. Well, what you do, this is a most amazing move. Knight c5. He has to take it. You're not only putting him in check, but you're covering his flight square. Now, he has to take it. He's no choice. Now, of course, you're looking at this and you're thinking, well, the knight's not covering it. No, but the queen is. Yes. But the queen's en prise, isn't it? So what do we do now? How do we finish this game in 2 moves? Well, you notice with moving the knight out the way, the bishop is free, isn't it? And what do we do with the bishop? We play here. Check. Now then, in that position, and this is how the game finished, by the way. He took here. He has to. He's nothing else. And then queen e5 checkmate. Isn't that a wonderful checkmate? And it's all the easier because we're controlling the G line. You don't even need this rook. That could be off the board. I hope you enjoyed this one. It's very instructive, and I trust that you managed to get something out of it. Goodbye for now.